You're come with me, he told after seeing how widow-beaten by in-laws for birthing twin girls. Dust rose in spirals through the alleyway behind the Tombstone General Store. 3 men took turns striking a woman curled on the ground, her dress torn and her lips split. She did not scream. Her arms wrapped around a wicker basket where 2 newborns whimpered, fists clenched, eyes shut against the violence. No one moved to stop it. Not the grocer, not the preacher, not even the sheriff, who watched from his porch with a blank face and a glass of whiskey. Then the sound of hooves, slow, steady, echoed down the main street. A rider approached, tall in the saddle, face shadowed under a worn hat, coat stained with trail dust. He dismounted without a word, glanced at the woman, then at the children. "You're coming with me," he said, voice like dry timber. The men laughed. One reached for his belt. The gunshot dropped him flat. The others stepped back. The rider lifted the woman, cradled the basket, and walked away. Before he was the man who walked into Tombstone and silenced a street with a single shot, Cody Harris was just a brother. He and Eli grew up on a patch of land near the Brazos River, 2 sons of a preacher and a woman who died too young. Their father taught them to split rails straight and say grace with their hats off. But it was Eli who laughed louder, rode faster, and never lost a fight. Not even with Cody. The Cody was the stone, Eli was the spark. They ran cattle together, built a cabin with their own hands, planned to double their herd and maybe find wives once the war clouds passed. They were boys still, but not for long. One cold spring, a man was shot during a robbery in town. A storekeeper. The only witness swore it was Eli, same coat, same horse. That was all it took. Cody rode hard to the judge in Junction, begging him to delay the execution. But the trial was already over. The rope had already been tied. Eli was hanged an hour before Cody arrived. They wouldn't even let him see the body. Said it was justice. Said it was done. Cody buried what was left of their life. The cattle, the tools, the cabin, and rode north without saying goodbye. He didn't leave his name behind. He left it behind him. The only thing he carried was Eli's saddle and a photograph of the 2 of them, sun-bleached and torn. He rode until the air grew thin and the ground turned to rock and pine. In the high country, he built a shack beside an abandoned sawmill and worked until he couldn't feel anything. He dug his own well, tamed wild horses for no one, hunted his own food, and spoke only to wind and wolves. He didn't trust people, didn't miss them, didn't want them near. The town below knew of him. They called him the Sawmill Ghost or the War Brother. Some said he was mad. Others said he was mourning. Maybe they were both right. He kept his days simple. Wake, work, watch the trees. He carved birds and spoons out of pine to keep his hands from remembering the feel of rope, the echo of a snapped neck. Sometimes he would ride down into town for salt or coffee, and folks would go quiet when he entered the store. He never caused trouble. But something about him, the stillness in his eyes, the way he watched exits, made even loud men speak soft. Yet for all the stone he'd placed around himself, a seed of something had stayed alive. The part that once rode hard for his brother. The part that had known laughter and warmth and faith in justice. It had just gone quiet. Until the day he saw that woman in the alley, beaten, broken, shielding babies with her torn arms, and the seed cracked open again. Cody had walked away from the world, but something in her pulled him back. Her name was Ellie Mae Chandler. The last name didn't belong to her anymore, though she still carried it like a scar. She had been married at 16 to Matthew Chandler, a man 10 years her senior whose family had money, land, and expectations. Ellie was pretty and quiet, which meant no one asked what she wanted. They just nodded when the match was made. Matthew wasn't cruel. He was sick. Fever caught him in the winter of their second year, and no doctor could fix what came after. She nursed him through it, night after night, reading aloud by candlelight and cooling his head with damp cloth. When he died, his family wept at the funeral and then turned to Ellie with blank eyes and cold mouths. There had been no son, only twin girls born early and small, with lungs that cried like birds and eyes too wise for their size. That alone was enough to shame the Chandlers. No male heir. No use. They gave her 2 weeks to pack. No money. No land. Not even the cradle Matthew had carved for the girls. She left with nothing but the twins swaddled against her chest and a warning. Keep quiet about anything she'd seen or heard or else. She walked for miles until she found a room above a boarding house in Prescott, cleaning sheets and carrying water for coin. She ate cold potatoes most nights, fed the girls with what little milk her body still made, and she kept quiet. Until one night, near the end of winter, a knock came at her door. 3 of them. Her dead husband's brother, Samuel Chandler, and 2 cousins. They didn't come to talk. She never screamed. She didn't plead. She curled her body around her daughters as fists landed and boots kicked. She held them like a shield. One of the babies bit her own lip from the pressure, and blood soaked the blanket. The men left her in the alley behind the general store. Told her next time they'd take the girls and raise them right. She couldn't move for minutes, then hours. Her face throbbed, one eye gone dark. Her ribs burned. But the babies still breathed. That's when Cody Harris found her. He hadn't planned to stop in town. He came only for a replacement axe handle and some jerky. But he heard the silence before he saw it. The strange, brittle quiet that falls when a town chooses not to act. The alley was still. 3 men stood over the woman, laughing, wiping blood from their hands. The babies whimpered in a basket at her feet. Cody didn't feel anger. He felt something deeper. He felt the weight of his brother's trial. The gallows, the rope, the crowd that watched. He saw the way Ellie clutched those girls, not fighting back, not crying, just sheltering them with what was left of herself. She didn't ask for help. She didn't know she was being watched. And that was the moment Cody couldn't walk past. When he picked her up, she didn't resist. She couldn't. Her eyes fluttered once, then closed. Her hands never left the babies. He carried all 3 out of that alley, through a town that refused to see, and into the mountains where wind and trees offered more humanity than people ever had. Cody carried them through the last stretch of mountain trail in silence. Ellie's head lolled against his shoulder. One of the girls whimpered once, then quieted. The other slept so still he stopped twice to make sure she still breathed. The cabin waited. Timbered bones wrapped in snow and shadow. Smoke drifted from the chimney where a low fire had burned since morning. Cody opened the door with his boot, stepped into warmth, and set Ellie gently on the cot. He wrapped the babies in the thickest blankets he had, lined the crate with wool and cedar chips, and placed them beside the fire. Then he lit lamps, stoked the coals, boiled water. He didn't speak. Words didn't matter. For 2 days, Ellie drifted in and out. Fever burned in her cheeks, and once, she cried out in her sleep. Not in pain, but in terror. Her hands clenched at her sides as if still trying to shield something. Cody wiped her brow with snowmelt, fed her broth in small spoonfuls, and stitched the gash on her shoulder by lamplight. When one of the girls refused milk, he made a paste of oats and goat's cream and fed her with a rag. He slept on the floor beside them, gun within reach, always listening. On the 3rd day, Ellie opened her eyes and whispered, "Where are we?" "Home," Cody said. It was the first word he'd spoken aloud in days. She watched him from the cot as he split wood, chopped kindling, fetched water. He moved like a man used to being alone, efficient, deliberate, quiet. Yet nothing he did felt harsh. When a blanket slipped from one of the girls, he adjusted it gently. When the stew boiled too long, he scraped the good bits from the bottom and left the rest. By the 5th day, she could sit up. By the 7th, she could walk. The bruises stayed longer, but they changed colors, softened at the edges. She began folding blankets, stirring porridge, holding the babies while Cody worked outside. One morning, she found him carving something on the porch. 2 small animals, rough but clear, a bear and a fox. He handed them to the girls without a word. That night, as the girls slept curled together in the crate, Ellie sat by the fire and spoke softly. "They'll say you're touched in the head," she said, "for doing this, for letting me stay." Cody didn't look up from the tin pot he was scrubbing. Let them say it. They'll say I tricked you, lied to you. I don't care. I'm not good at being helped. You're good at surviving, he said. That's more useful. She laughed. Just once, a dry sound like wind through needles. Then she was quiet again. They beat me because I wouldn't give them the girls, she said. They said they'd raise them right. Teach them to be proper women. Cody set the pot down. He didn't say anything. He just sat beside her, close but not touching. And for the first time in years, Ellie felt safe enough to cry. Not from pain, from being seen. It was a red sunrise the morning they came. Cody was splitting cedar along the east fence when he heard the horses. 3 sets of hooves pounding through the snow-thawed earth. Fast but not reckless. Riders who knew how to pace a hard journey. He set the axe down slow, wiped his hands, and walked back to the cabin. Ellie stood at the window already, her face pale. One baby in her arms, the other asleep behind her. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Cody saw it in her shoulders. They had come. 3 men rode up to the clearing with the confidence of people who'd never been told no. The lead was Samuel Chandler, Matthew's older brother, all angles and silk-threaded coats. His cousins flanked him, heavier in build, their eyes scanning the tree-line like they expected an ambush. Cody stepped out and closed the door behind him. He didn't touch his gun. Didn't need to. It hung visible on his hip, worn and clean. Samuel tipped his hat. "Morning," he said. "Heard you've taken in our sister-in-law." "She ain't yours," Cody said. Samuel smiled like a banker. "Well, see, that's a funny thing to say. She's blood. Those girls, too, carry the Chandler name. We got rights. They carry her blood. Not yours." Samuel's smile didn't shift, but something colder slid behind it. "You're out here in the hills with a woman and 2 infants that don't belong to you. Makes a man wonder what kind of arrangement this is." Cody said nothing. "We've got a lawyer says she's unfit. Testimony from townsfolk. She left the girls in a boarding house while she worked nights. She fed them," Cody said. "Worked herself raw doing it. Doesn't matter. Perception's everything." The second cousin, broad-chested with a scar across his cheek, leaned forward. "We're not here to fight, but we'll take what's ours." "She's not a mule," Cody said. "You don't claim her like property." "No," Samuel said softly. "But we claim the girls. And if she won't come peacefully, we'll get the court to do it. Law's still law, even up here in the pines." Cody stepped down from the porch. "If you stay past this breath," he said, "you won't ride out." Silence. Even the horses stopped shifting. Samuel looked around, at the narrow trail that led into the clearing, at the tight trees, at the distant smoke from the cabin's chimney. Then at Cody. "You threatening us?" "No," Cody said. "I'm promising." For a moment no one moved. The snow dripped from the branches overhead. The fire inside the cabin cracked once. Then Samuel tugged his reins. "Let's go," he muttered. "He's made his choice." They turned their horses, rode off slow, but the threat stayed behind. Cody watched until they passed out of sight. Then he went back inside. Ellie hadn't moved from the window. The baby in her arms stirred, sensing her tension. "They'll be back," she whispered. "I know. They'll go to a judge. Claim abandonment. Insanity. I know. And if they get a writ, they'll come with more than words." Cody nodded. He took his rifle from the wall and laid it across the table. Not as a threat, as a symbol. "We'll be ready." That night, fear crept into the walls. Not loud, just present. Ellie didn't speak at dinner. She kept the girls close, wrapped their feet in an extra blanket, sang them a lullaby with a voice that cracked midway through. After they fell asleep, she sat beside the fire, eyes hollow. "They'll take them," she said. "No matter what I do. They have money, friends in town. All they need is a story people can nod at." Cody didn't argue, because she wasn't wrong. But he said something she hadn't expected. "Then we make a better story." She looked at him. "One they can't undo. One with roots." "I don't understand." You will, he said. He stood and walked to the cupboard, pulled out a box wrapped in cloth. Inside were a silver ring, a worn Bible, and a marriage certificate blank and signed. He set it on the table. Then he looked at her. I don't offer this for protection or pity. You're not something I'm fixing. She stared at the ring. I'm not whole, she said. Neither am I. She didn't cry. She just reached out and touched the ring. Not as a promise, but maybe as a beginning. The letter came folded in blue parchment, sealed with wax and carried by a freighter passing through the mining camps east of Red Hollow. Cody picked it up with his monthly supplies, didn't think much of it, until he saw Ellie's name written in clean, practiced script across the front. He handed it to her that afternoon. She stood by the stove, spooning mashed beans into the girls' mouths. The moment she touched the envelope, her whole body changed, stiff, cautious, expectant. She read it in silence, then read it again and again. Cody stayed near the fire, not speaking, just waiting. When she finally sat, the letter trembled in her hands. It's from my cousin Clara, she said. We haven't spoken since before the wedding. She lives in San Antonio now. Her husband's dead. She owns property, runs a dry goods store. She paused. She's offering me the back house. Says she'll register me under her name. That I can be someone new. We can start over. She even wired money for the travel. Enough for 2 horses, food, and shelter till I settle in. Cody nodded slowly. Ellie's voice shook. She says she doesn't care what the Chandlers say. Says she knows what men like that are. A long silence passed between them. Then she asked, You going to try to stop me? Cody shook his head. I wouldn't. She swallowed hard. You going to ask me to stay? He didn't move. Didn't even blink. No. Her voice broke. Why not? Because it's your choice. She stared at the floor. He rose, walked to the cupboard, and began pulling out supplies. Dried beans, apples wrapped in cloth, a tin of coffee. He moved slow, methodical, not out of indifference but respect, like a man helping someone prepare for battle. Ellie watched his hands move, knowing every motion meant goodbye. He saddled the mare at dawn, packed 2 blankets, filled the water skins, tied the bundles tight with waxed twine. She stood on the porch, the girls bundled in the cradle beside her. I'm not running, she said. I know. I'm not scared. I know that too. She looked down at the babies, their breath clouded in the cold morning air. I want something clean, something without bruises. Cody tied the last knot on the saddle. You deserve that. The wind stirred. A jaybird called out from the trees. Ellie walked to the mare, reached for the saddle horn, then stopped. I thought you'd fight me on it, she said, almost laughing. Cody turned. I've fought everything else, he said. Didn't get me much. She searched his face, looking for something. A crack, a plea, a flicker of want. But he was still. Say something, she whispered. So he did. If you go, I'll ride with you to the halfway pass. Make sure you're safe. If you stay, he hesitated. Then, I'll build you a life. Not just a roof and food, but a place where those girls can grow up without shame. Where no man decides who they are. Where you wake up without fear. He stepped closer. I'll never raise my voice to you. Never put a hand on you. I won't ask you to forget what happened, or pretend it didn't. I'll just show up every morning and make the fire. And if you ever want to leave, I'll pack the bags myself. Ellie's eyes brimmed. She looked at the horse, at the letter, at her girls. She walked to the saddlebag, untied it, set it on the porch. Cody didn't smile. He just exhaled. The long, aching breath of a man who hadn't known how badly he wanted something until it was almost gone. Ellie stepped close and placed her hand against his chest. I don't want new names, she said. I want a new truth. He nodded. Then that's what we'll write. They married beneath the tall pine on the East Hill. Just them, 2 sleeping babies, a silent grove, and the early stirrings of spring. Cody wore the same coat he'd ridden into Tombstone with. Ellie wore a dress mended at the hem, her hair braided over one shoulder. No preacher, no witnesses, just a shared vow, spoken low and certain. I'll be kind to you, every day I have breath, and I'll stay free beside you, not under you, not behind. They kissed once, shyly, then returned to the cabin, where the fire waited and the babies stirred. There was no feast, just bread, honey, and coffee. The table small but warm, the windows open to birdsong. That evening, Cody sat on the porch with one twin on his chest and the other in Ellie's arms. The air smelled of ash and pine needles. A breeze moved the trees like gentle hands over water. Ellie leaned her head against his shoulder. I used to dream of silence, she said. Not peace, just the absence of pain. And now I want mornings. Real ones. With wet socks and burned toast and crying babies. A man who doesn't vanish when I need him. And girls who grow up with names they're proud to carry. He took her hand, the baby shifting in his lap. Then that's what we'll build. And they did. Day by day, inch by inch. Cody added a room to the cabin, built a chicken coop, traded carved toys for sugar and thread. Ellie planted herbs in the window boxes and taught the girls songs from her childhood. They laughed. Not often, not loud, but real. The girls grew. Learned to walk barefoot in the moss, to gather berries, to ask questions. When storms came, they weren't afraid. Cody told them stories of rivers and horses. Ellie sang lullabies with her hands still in the dough. Years passed. Not fast. Not slow. Just steady. Cody stopped watching the trail so often. Stopped waiting for riders to appear from the trees. No one came. Not from the Chandler ranch. Not from the courts. Not even from town. Maybe they understood that fear hadn't worked. Maybe they knew the girls had already been saved. Maybe, just maybe, they'd learned silence from the man who carried no badge but protected like one. One fall morning, long after the girls had grown past diapers and milk teeth, Ellie stepped onto the porch with steaming mugs. Cody sat sharpening a knife. She handed him a cup, then looked out at the clearing. The air feels still, she said. It is. For how long, you think? He smiled faintly. Long as we keep it that way. She nodded. The girls played in the field. Hair unbound, feet dusty, laughter like a creek after snowmelt. Ellie leaned into him, closing her eyes. I never got to dream like this before, she said. Then dream it now. The wind rose soft through the pines. A hawk circled above. And the cabin, once a refuge, now a home, stood steady against the sky.